You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Hello, friends. I have a treat for you today. I'm going to introduce you to my guests, my friend and mentor, Susan Hyatt. A moment of truth here, Susan is one of my mentors. She is a person who, over the years, I have looked to for support and training in my very own life. A few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I was listening to a show, a thought leader, somebody talking about menopause culture and how it was similar or a rebrand of some of the things that we deal with in diet and beauty culture. And two things happened to me as I was listening to that at the very exact same time. First, my brain locked up and froze because I was thinking to myself, ooh, wait a second, I need to listen to that again because I actually, for my own self, had not drawn that conclusion about those 2, 3 things: diet culture, beauty culture, menopause culture. And I had not drawn that conclusion. And so that was new to me. And then the very next, sort of simultaneous thought that I had was, I wonder what Susan thinks about this because she has written a prominent book about building a life outside of diet culture. And she's been talking about that in a very public way and teaching and living that online for years. And so I wanted to know what she thought. So in this episode, I talked to Susan about how she had the idea to write a book about diet culture in the first place, why she wanted to publish it, where she got the courage to do that, all of the things with that. And we talk about what it's like to be public, because she's got a very public persona about a topic like diet and health. And she's a real life human being who's out there doing this in our very instant feedback online culture that we live in right now. So we do talk about menopause culture, and we talk about what she calls the protein panic, and we talk about biohacking for longevity. It's a great conversation. One of the things that's going through my mind as I record this is that at least one person is probably listening to this while out on a walk with a weighted vest, because the internet tells us that that's what we need to be doing. And there's no shade on walking and listening to podcasts or weighted vests. I myself have a weighted vest, so I'm all in for that. But maybe take a second and put your protein shake down for just a minute and enjoy this conversation with Susan Hyatt. Susan Hyatt, welcome to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm so happy you're here. Are you ready for a fun chat with me today?
Amy Stone, if it's not fun, I'm out. So I am geared up for fun.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I know the answer to this question already because you and I know each other, but I always ask people, what part of the world are you in?
I am in the great Midwest, Indiana.
Love it. All right. Next warm-up question. And I gave you a hint about what this was about. This is going to come out in the deep, deep, deep part of winter. How do you feel about cold, gray winter weather? Do you love it? Do you hate it? A little bit of both?
I actually love any extreme weather. So I grew up in the South, and have lived in the Northeast and the Midwest my whole adult life. And I am the weirdo who gets excited about cold and snow. So I love every season, if I'm being honest, but bring me all the winter. Bring it.
Love it. I love that. I have very little winter exposure in my adult life because I moved to the almost tropics, but I'm learning to love it with good winter clothes. All right. So in this conversation, you and I are going to talk about choosing to write a book about diet culture, beauty culture, the new meno culture, which maybe is not even a thing. How does
It's a
that
thing.
sound today?
I am excited to dive into this, of course.
I love it. You are on a short list of guests because most of the people who come to the show, they pitch me and they have an idea. But I actually reached out to you because I know you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have an idea. And the person I want to talk to about this is Susan. So let's start here. I know that you've told this story a bunch of times, but some people listening may not have heard it. I looked it up. You published the book Bear in, I think, March of 2019. Does that sound right?
That's right.
Okay. Thinking back, when did you first have the idea for the book?
Oh, the idea for the book came a few years prior to that, in 2017. And it came as a result of coaching hundreds of women on food and body issues. And what I really realized was that I really had something with the homework assignments that I assigned and the approach that I took, which was like, let's stop dieting and see what happens if you take really great care of yourself from a place of love and support and care versus fear and deprivation. And so I started assembling the philosophy for Bear and decided to pitch it as a book.
All right. So, and I have read the book. I have gone through the curriculum. I'm familiar with it, those kind of things. I want to ask you about your publishing experience because, and motivation and intention, but a huge number of adults
Mhm.
want to publish books.
Yeah.
And the way we publish books and write books has really shifted in our lifetime. But so tell us a little bit about your publishing experience and how it worked for you. You had an idea, you had something that you had become you had a philosophy, a curriculum. How did you go to publish the book? How did that happen?
Well, I have always wanted to write a book, like a lot of people, right? And I think the stats are only 2% of people who start
Something
writing
like
a book
that. Yeah.
finish. But I always wanted to be a published author. I love writing. And I researched how to put together a book proposal, and I hired somebody to help me. And I put this book proposal together to first pitch agents. So I wanted to go the traditional publishing route. I had also self-published a book. Well, it was really a step above, just one notch above self-publishing. My first book was called Create Your Own Luck. And so I knew how to self-publish essentially, and I really wanted the distribution that traditional publishers offer. And so I needed an agent. And so I started pitching agents and I was really getting nowhere. I had tons of friends who were published authors that gave warm introductions to literary agents, and everybody, like, people just didn't get it. They were like, well, can we just squeeze a chapter in on how to stop eating sugar? And I'm like, no, no, you don't get it. And so I went to somebody who a woman named Betsy Rappaport, who's
Okay.
also a trained coach and mentors authors more in the memoir niche. But I asked her if she would take a look at my book proposal and help me. And I remember she looked at it and she was like, okay, you need to show these agents and publishers like who you really are. And she encouraged me to lay out my pitch like a magazine, and use a lot of my personality and photos and things like that to grab attention. So, at any rate, she helped me change my proposal that wasn't working. My original proposal was not getting me any agent attention. And lo and behold, the agent who stood up and took notice was someone I cold pitched. So I went through and researched agents who worked in the nonfiction space, and I just started sending query letters. And someone said, her name is Katie Kochman. She said, I'll take a look. And she told me no initially. And then I said, I'm going to go improve this and come back. And I did. And she said, oh, okay, I would love to represent you. That was like hurdle number one. Then it was pitching publishers, which I was very naive. I thought, oh, I have a real agent now. We're going to have a bidding war. And let me tell you how no one wanted this book. I had a trip planned to New York City, and she was pitching publishers. And I was like, listen, I'm going to be in the city on these dates, line up meetings. And she was like, I don't know if you're aware how these things work, but that's a Jewish holiday. And a
Oh.
lot of publishing, like a lot of these people aren't even going to be in the office. But I was just convinced that I was going to get a deal. And so I went to New York. It was my 10-year business anniversary. I was having an event, and no one responded to her, literally nobody. And I decided in that moment that I would create, I had this beautiful Airbnb loft that I had rented, and I had a videographer that was there for different purposes. And I decided to video Bear as a digital program and create my own book advance, essentially. Since I was, instead of moping around that nobody wanted me, I essentially created my own platform, if you will. And then eventually, a publisher did get it and
Okay.
decided to take me on.
Well, so, and I've known you enough to see you do this and sort of create your own space and step into it in a bunch of different ways. And I'd heard the story about how you published the book. So I knew that, but I wanted to give you a chance to redo it and remember all of those things as we talked about that, because I want to have you back in that space of like intention and motivation and how you made these decisions, because I think that there's layers of this, but I think it's kind of scary on a bunch of different layers. So when you think back to that point as you were going through this process, do you remember still, and this is a hard thing to do, to look back and remember intention and motivation accurately, but let's do it anyway. So the what was the motivation and intention that was pushing you through getting over these hurdles at that time?
Mm. Well, I knew that what I was teaching was important. And I knew how many women, including myself, that were freer than they had ever been around food and body issues. And so I really felt like, as someone who had struggled with being on all kinds of crazy diets and doing all sorts of things to conform to culture at large, beauty standards, um I was really devoted to that message. I still am. And I actually just had a friend right before we jumped on this podcast. She's traveling and she's in the South where I'm from, and she took a picture of her breakfast plate, and it was like a buttermilk biscuit, grits with butter, bacon. And she said, I went power walking for 30 minutes in the rain to earn this plate. And the way I read her for filth, I was like, you don't have to run in the rain to earn your food, right? And so there's so much work yet to be done still,
Yeah.
because it's so permeated in our culture. So the way I kept going, it, like, you can see how hopped up I get about it. Like, I just want women to be free of these ridiculous rules that keep our capacity shrunk. So I'm always saying, like, let's focus on wage gap, not thigh gap, because that's like, the more we're consumed with that kind of crap, the less money we're earning, the less impact we're having. So I just kept connected to that, and that kept me going.
I see it. I do see it. All right. So before we go deeper, I want to like rewind just a teeny tiny bit and give you a chance to kind of define or explain this word that we're using, these words that we're using, like diet culture, beauty culture, menoculture. Share a little bit in your opinion. I'm not going to hold you to it, like looking it up in the dictionary, but give people a concept of what we mean when we sort of talk about those things.
So diet culture is a system, and a culture of rules designed to keep women obedient. So diet culture is, when we talk about culture at large, we're talking about everything that's coming at you through all of your senses. Rules that you were taught through family of origin, through your religion, through the media, and in books, in billboards, it's everywhere. And it's basically this system and attitude of rules that this is how you are a good girl or woman. And diet culture's rules include things like be as thin as possible, be as little as possible. Minnow culture is a little different, but it's along the same premise. It's
Yeah.
written and unwritten rules that we adhere to subconsciously and consciously.
I get it. I do. All right. So What was it, before we move off of intention, I'm going to ask you like a kind of a funny question. What was in your mind, like in the back of your mind, like what was it that about you that you needed to be the person that wrote the book? Like, how did you get the courage to be like, I'm going to put myself out into public with my ideas?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I'm just a firm believer that each and every one of us, our stories matter. And my story was, someone who at the age of 12 started dieting because I was told that my thighs were too big in a Polaroid picture, right? And so it set off this chain reaction that lasted for the next 30 years, or I'm sorry, 20 something years, where I was someone who was trapped in a cycle of deprivation and binging. And I wasn't someone who thought like I must be the one, but I was someone who thought like this story deserves to be told, and I know I can help people with not only my story but client stories that I've had the honor of witnessing.
I love that answer. One of the reasons I asked that is because, in my experience, you can't hang out in too many rooms full of women before you hear, especially women who are working on self-development, improvement, empowerment, before you run into the conversation about the challenges of being visible
Mhm.
and being seen. And so I think it kind of connects, and I wanted to lead into that. So you published this book in 2019. The
Mhm.
world has sort of sped up and gone more online since
Mhm.
that time. And you actually have a pretty visible profile out
Mhm.
there on the internet streets. When you published a book about diet culture and those kind of things, that can be a very hot topic opinion. People have lots of different things to say about that.
Mhm.
When you put something like that in public, you accidentally or intentionally, did you know that you were stepping into a place where people were going to push back a little bit and have feedback and criticisms and ideas about the world, the ideas that you put in the world? Were you ready for that?
Yes and yes. I had already been experiencing it because it wasn't like when the book was published, that was the first time I was talking about it. I had been talking about it for a decade. And so I had already received a lot of pushback. I also, honestly, I expected more pushback than I received. So, and I received plenty, and I continue to receive plenty. But I knew that, for example, there is a very well-known published author in the diet culture space who my publisher also published her book. And so before my book came out, I reached out to her to see if she would read an advance copy and maybe give me a blurb because, hey, we're on the same team and we have the same publisher. And the way she sent me the most scathing email, she didn't like much about me. And and so there were some shocking reactions from people who didn't think I was feminist enough.
Yeah.
And then other folks who thought, you're just crazy. So I sort of, I don't ever consider myself in the middle way or middle of the road kind of thing. But in the diet culture space, there were plenty of people were like, well, who do you think you are? You look like the cultural, not ideal, but like you're a small person, you're blonde
Yeah.
haired, you're blue eyed. Like, who do you think you are talking about this? And so there and continue to be plenty of people who think they don't want to listen to somebody who looks like I do.
Yeah, no, you jumped forward to one of the things that I wanted to call out, like call bring the elephant out into the room. This is something I've learned actually a lot about from you
Mhm.
in different ways, how to step into this space. But you and I are not melanated people. We are two white women living in small bodies.
Mhm.
And we speak English. We are middle age, all of these things. Do you get, I mean, I assume that you do get pushback. You said you did, where people are like, who are you to talk about these challenges when I look at you, you don't represent that. So
Mhm.
how do you move through that space and navigate that when people challenge you on your ideas, which people do on social media on all platforms, and oranges are not pineapples. I mean, there's no right or wrong, no reason about these things,
Oh,
but how do you navigate that?
yeah, listen, I mean, just being a woman online, you are going to get pushback. And so just understanding that. So I just have always said like, hey, you're correct in that I enjoy a certain number of privileges, and I'm very passionate about using that privilege to open doors that only I could, right? And so, um, I want to use all this privilege in a way that helps people who are more oppressed than I am. And so it's like, I'm not going to shut up because I have big boobs and blonde hair and blue eyes, like that's ridiculous. And also like, so the only people who get to speak out about this are the most oppressed? Or is this the oppression Olympics? And
Right.
that's what the online space can sometimes feel like. And so it's like, yes, I can say, I am in a small body. I am white. I am wealthy. I have had a million privileges. And also, I still have experienced these things over here. And there are a lot of women who benefit from me speaking up and telling my story.
Yeah, I think that you are an example of a way to do that. And I appreciate you walking us through that because it can be hard to figure it out for exactly many of those reasons. It doesn't almost matter how you show up online. People will come back and say, oh, no, not that. Red is bad, green is good,
Right.
and everybody has an opinion. And it can be really hard to figure out what is going on online. In my own experience, all right, so it's been several years since you published the book. A lot of diet culture is also enmeshed in ideas with like youth and beauty, so on and so forth. Let's shift a little bit and talk about, we are now aging up. It's like some sort of algorithmic thing. The minute you turn like 48, they begin to feed you like perimenopause things. Like now it's time to eat 100 grams of protein a day, get your weighted vest. Here are your product lines. I didn't come up with this myself, actually. I was listening to somebody else talk about it, and they were like, oh, there are parallels between diet beauty culture and menopause influencers. Have you noticed that? Like, what do you think about that?
Yes, ma'am. Have I noticed it? So, it's sort of like it's diet culture in a new wig, right? So yes, diet culture and beauty culture, it's like, oh, so as you start to age, right, not only is culture always trying to feed us that we need to be as small as possible, but we also need to be as young as possible. And women who are aging are feared, right? Because when we are no longer beholden to the male gaze, we're no longer of reproduction age. We're no longer, a lot of the things that sort of held us back we're free from it. And then all of a sudden it's like, this is dangerous. Okay. And so aging and menopause becomes something you fix instead of something that is supported. And so I did start to notice and like, oh my God, I fell for it. Like,
Yes, no, me too. I had to
yeah,
somebody point it out because, and this is where it gets nuanced. I totally interrupted you as a terrible host.
that's okay. That was okay.
But even if you're on the lookout for it, one of the things that I think is really interesting in my own experience is that, and you can go from this, there's so little actual information and support around menopause that I was like, of course, we're leading into the influencers, like, this is the way you fix it. This is the way you do it right. And that's why I think when somebody pointed out the similarities, I was like, oh my God, how could I fall for that? How did I
Right.
not
Well,
catch it?
it's a good point you bring up in that women's health has been so poorly researched that it's like we're like, what? And we're finding out things that, maybe our mothers didn't know. And we're talking about perimenopause and menopause in a way that's never been talked about before. Those things are great. But I fell for the protein panic is what I'm calling it. And it took an anti-diet nutritionist who's in my space to say, I interviewed her And it was so funny because she was like, okay, so you're going to have 150 grams of protein a day. Do you think it goes directly to your bicep? And I was like, what do you mean? Right. And then I sort of noticed like it's like it's like food rules just repackaged.
Yes.
You must have this much protein. You must do this. You must do that. And it's just this wellness industrial complex that is all about fixing and fear mongering. And when what you were describing is like, okay, let's get educated. And
Yeah.
so there is research out there becoming available. There is information becoming available from people who aren't fear mongering and who aren't going to tell you you need to be on a million supplements. And to think about menopause as something to be celebrated and supported, right? Just like when I talk about food and body stuff, like move with love and eat like you love yourself. Menopause, instead of being like, oh my God, it's like, no, like what kind of support do I need to thrive? And that completely changes the lens in which you look at this transition.
Yeah. And I mean, which I will say, it is validating and supportive to open up your favorite app, and see somebody representing, the experience you're having. So it does feel good when you open up the app and see, what is her name? The We Do Not Care Club. Like, that's hilarious.
She is
Love it.
hilarious.
Right. And it is so funny. It's like, oh, we do not care about if you don't want to do your part in this, we're checking out. And with all the glasses and all the places, I mean, she's really good. So it does feel good to find people and be supported. But similarly, like, so when I used to do the ultra endurance events, I would in peak season, I had to work, and it's hard to take in 100 grams, 150 grams of protein. That's all you think about. And I didn't know whether or not it was right or not, but I was like, did I suddenly become a bodybuilder? Like when I turned 50, is that what has happened?
Mhm.
And that's not to say that if people are out there listening and they feel better when they do that, go for it, right? I'm not the protein police, in any way, shape, or form.
Well, right.
But
Like
yeah,
protein, listen, protein is
protein's
great.
good.
Just understanding that a lot of the fear mongering is
Yes.
unnecessary.
And I think also the thing that I've become very jaded about, for better or worse, is the magical guarantees. So if I walk with a weighted vest and take in 100 grams of protein, all of the things wrong in my life will magically be fixed. 3, 2, 1, let's go. That has become to me something that I watch for. That I'm like, how sure are we about this?
Mhm.
So, and that leads me into this thing, like, as somebody who's out there, you're out there, you do create people who follow you online. You do share your opinions. You're out there doing big things in the space, talking about women and doing these things. What guideline do you have, or what thoughts do you have as someone who is out there doing this, about where you draw the line in, like, what responsibility you have about giving quality information, all kind of stuff like that when you're showing up online?
So I do take it very seriously, and I'm also clear that like the core thing that I teach is that your body compass is the barometer, right? I'm always bringing a woman back to her own intuition and her own truth. So, right, just like we were just talking about protein, if you know that eating 100 grams of protein makes you feel fantastic, that's your guidance system telling you that, as opposed to some expert saying, no, 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 you need 20 more, right? And so when I'm sharing resources and information that I get, I'm always doing it through the attitude of like, take what resonates with you and ditch the rest. And also, I'm not specifically, so a program that I created called Own the Iron is about lifting heavy weights for women in midlife, which is important and is documented by science and research, that what happens in our bodies as we age, how important it is that we maintain muscle mass, so that we can live the lifestyle that we want to live, right? The approach isn't you must be doing these things. The approach is think about the kind of lifestyle you want to live. And if it involves lifting grandchildren, carrying luggage, right, being able to be self-reliant, then here are some things that you want to back up and start doing now so that you maintain your strength, which is really different from gym culture that wants to just repackage diet culture stuff and get you hooked on like bulking and
Yeah.
cutting, doing all that gym stuff.
Yeah, and you love the gym and you love
Love it.
lifting heavy. It's a huge part of your personality. Before that, or maybe still, you were like a massive Peloton fan, like that you were. Do
I
you still do
haven't
it?
I still own my bike and my tread. And I imagine I might hop on the tread during some of the winter early mornings, but I haven't been on my Peloton in forever. I'm still a runner, but I have traded heavy weightlifting for the time I used to spend on the Peloton.
Yeah, so that's and the words that my trainers have used over the past few, they call it like functional strength, and they're
Yeah.
like, it's getting ready to do, like you mentioned, things unless for people who are listening and watching, if you have people in your life that are in their late 80s and 90s, right? It's like, reaching over your head to get a bowl out of a cabinet, reaching into the washing machine to pull stuff out can be and then the big ones, showering, standing up, carrying grandchildren, and stepping off a curb, like having the
Yep.
strength to do that. That's like a really common thing, and being having the balance and the strength to hopefully do that, which lends us into this thing, which is this other thing that we've got menoculture, and then we've also got these influencers out there that are talking about longevity and here's how you want to live to be a million years old. And I gotta say I'm not sure how I want to do that, like, because it doesn't look like fun to me, to tell you the truth, but yeah.
Well, and I do think, right. So, I do think it's interesting, right, to look at like biohacking
Yeah.
and all the longevity stuff and to think about like, okay, if you want to live a long life, then what quality of life, though, do you want to have in those years? And
Yeah.
so I think those questions are important because it's like, is the goal to just live as long as possible? Or is
Right.
the goal, right? Like, what kind of quality of life do you want to have? And I find a lot of the longevity stuff to be pushed by men and it has a competitive undertone to it, like live as long as possible. When I'm like, I mean, I think 95 sounds great, right? As long as there's certain things that I
Yeah.
want to be able to do.
Right. I always think of that picture at the front of the beginning of the Willy Wonka movie where they're all lying in bed and they haven't gotten it. They haven't gotten out of bed for years and years and years. And then he jumps up and goes on the adventure. But yeah, it's like if life is sitting in a chair or it's, really restricted to a small room with nothing but ailments, I think thinking about the quality of life that you want is a helpful thing. And also, I don't know, like I'm not there yet. Talk to me when I'm 95, but hanging out with people who are going through the challenges of that it's not the sales pitch you'd think that it would be, based on social media, live forever. And it does come back to that because some of those biohacking things, they might be great. And I'm all for innovation and all of those things like you are. But sometimes people describe things. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to eat cottage cheese for 3 meals a day, like,
Like, I'm always laughing, like, is this what we're doing now?
right.
I'm looking at like, okay, so now we're wearing these, and I'm not, but like these infrared masks, and and it's crazy making to me. I'm like, making conditions for thriving a part-time job
Yeah.
is ridiculous. And so I am always wanting to be this loving voice of reason that's like, you don't have to do this. Like, come over here and like, here's some supportive things that you can do for yourself that are actually going to matter versus this busy work to stay compliant, really.
Oh, compliant, that's a really important word. That's a good word choice there because that is what it feels like. And it's balanced by the side. And I don't know, like you've talked a lot, at least some publicly about your perimenopause experience. It's tricky. Like stuff starts happening and you don't know that it's happening to you until somebody tells you.
Hmm.
And there's similarities. So because life doesn't stop. It's not like you get a postcard in the mail that's like, hey, this thing that's happening to you is not just stress, it's perimenopause. In my case, I was like, oh, gosh, I'm not sleeping about it very well. It must be any of these other things. And then when somebody said it could be perimenopause, I was like, what? Say who? Excuse me?
Like it's shocking. And I
Yeah.
think I was in denial for a long time because I thought I was too young to be experiencing perimenopause, which, right,
Oh,
women's health
yeah.
and research has been so lacking that it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I actually check every one of these symptom boxes. Let me explore this. But then when you start exploring it, it's confusing. Most OBGYNs and general practitioners don't have any training on this. And so you get conflicting information from people who, up until that point, right? Your general practitioner. I love my general practitioner. She's a great person to go to if you have the flu or
Yeah.
you go for your annual checkup. But her advice on hormones was trash. And she didn't know what she was talking about. And so I think that a key message here is that if something doesn't feel right, if you don't feel like yourself, you must advocate for yourself and figure it out so that you can support your system in a way that's helpful.
So now here's a question that may be ridiculous, but because you did grow up in the South,
Hmm.
and if people are listening, you still have a little bit of a Southern twang every once in a while, which is like a clue. Did you get some of that old school nice girl messaging that was like, hey, you're not supposed to talk about stuff like this. This is private.
Oh, for sure. I will say, so I grew up um, going to an all-girls Catholic school. Um, don't make a scene, don't ruffle any feathers. And of course, I've pretty much always been pretty mouthy. However, it's just as I've aged and hey, thank you, menopause. I mean, right, once you get low estrogen, then it's really like a whole new ball game. But yeah, my I will credit my mom though. She went on hormone replacement therapy way back in the day, and she was someone who kept saying, "You need to get this checked out. You need to get on
Oh,
hormone
that's good.
replacement therapy," which I do think is unusual given the fact that all of the other programming I had received was like, well, she certainly doesn't think I should maybe be on the internet streets talking about everything, right? But right, like this is private and you can't talk about these things. It was certainly part of my upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a little bit weird. So I actually had a male GP and a male OB.
Mhm.
And I remember having this conversation, and we were talking about this, and I was like, listen, you're a very smart guy, but there's no way that you could ever have experienced this. Like, you just can't ever know. Like, it's impossible. You could never have known. And I was like, I need to be in a room with more women. And the nurses in the back of the room were just sort of like scratching their head. They're like, we'll talk to you off to the side once he leaves the room kind of thing.
Uh,
It
yeah.
can be a weird dynamic, and very, very interesting. All right, so what impact does it have for people like as we unpack all these different culture things? An interesting thing came out this week regarding like a social media platform that's not like LinkedIn. There, people are saying now the algorithm favors men, just gendered, which is an interesting. I don't know if that's true or how people would figure that out. I just read the headline,
Mm.
but when we talk about all of these sort of society things, and so much of the information that we get is through these platforms. That's how we get our information these days. There's no other option.
Mhm.
So how do you sort of walk the street and figure out for yourself and help people figure out like this is how we figure out what's good, this is how we figure out what's bad, this is how we deal with when information changes because like the hormone replacement
Mhm.
therapy that was like avoid it, it'll kill you. And now it's like go, everybody get it. It's like this stuff doesn't stay the same all the time.
I know. I think the thing that I would recommend is that everybody get as educated as possible. Read the books, check out and pay attention to how your body responds to what you're hearing. And if it sounds too good to be true, like you were talking about, like the promises that
Yeah.
like, hey, you take this supplement or you eat this amount of protein and it's gonna take away all these symptoms. I think it's like thinking for yourself like this isn't something to be fixed, it is something to be supported, and that can change the way that you educate yourself, the way that you talk about it, and the kind of messaging. Like if the messaging is insulting, if the messaging is too like that you have to have too much discipline or you have to restrict or you have to you know I want you to pay attention to those kinds of messages. And something that I'm always thinking when I'm exploring like that I'm always like I might not know what I need to know. So something my dad said, he passed away last year, and something he used to always say that cracked me up. He loved gossip.
Okay.
And he would say, if you got on the phone with him, he would say, "What do you know that I don't know?" And I'm always thinking that when I am listening to someone talk about a topic that's meaningful for me, it's like, what do they know that I don't know? And sometimes I'm like, they don't know, right? But
Right.
I'm at least open to hearing about it. I think being in sort of these absolute camps can really block us from information that we need. So I would say get educated, pay attention to how your body responds to it, and stay away from anything that sounds too self-policing, too disciplined, too restrictive.
And one of the things that I think I hear you saying, but correct me if I'm reading it the wrong way, is that sometimes we have to try these things
Yeah,
for ourselves that we don't necessarily know what it's going to be, and it can be different for different people. So one of the things. So, would you describe yourself as a competitive person?
I actually am not.
Okay, that's really interesting. So how about because you are interested in weightlifting and you're setting new goals for yourself.
Mhm.
And so then do people often like do I made a snap judgment there. I totally misjudged you and thought that you would be a competitive person, but you're not. So how do you deal with like when people expect you? So since you're in there, you're lifting weights, you're talking about it, you post videos of like workouts and things like that. Do people come at you and say, oh, you should do 75 hard or you should get into this huge challenge and they think you're going to be there and you're like, no, that's not how I do this. How do you
Yeah,
sort of reconcile that with your integrity?
I think people are often surprised that I am consistent, but I'm not competitive. So I like to challenge myself, but I like to challenge myself incrementally. I will take big, bold risks, but it's not in a competitive way. It's more in a let me see what I can do way. And so when people come at me with that kind of stuff, I get DMs almost daily on my weightlifting videos. And they're like people who have no idea what kind of training program I'm doing or any idea what my actual goals are. And it's mostly men, will say, like, oh, you're moving that bar so fast. You can put more on that bar. And it's like, this was actually my warm up. I'm just showing people that I'm here, right?
Yeah.
Or I was doing 4 sets of what, like, you don't even know what my training program is. Shut up. So I'm really interested in showing up consistently, but in a sustainable way. So a lot of that, whatever, 75 hard stuff, that is not for me. I
That
am
is so
not
that
that
is it.
person.
And so we do live in like a time of like instant feedback, which I was thinking about it because I watched like Oprah has sort of redone her talk show. So now it's a podcast. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the fact that back in the 80s, when she had like her afternoon talk show, there was no way to give her instant feedback on that,
Right.
right? But
Right.
now, you release something and immediately people are like, well, not like necessarily for me, but for somebody who has a big profile, people can come directly to you and be like, I don't agree, and you're wrong, and here's how you're wrong. And like, all of those things. It's a wild time
It
to
is.
be alive.
It is.
It's a wild time
A
to be alive.
lot.
And so then the thing is, how do you, for people who are out there who want to share their message or start the conversation with their friends or so on and so forth, do you think everybody needs to like go online and do TikTok videos about their experiences, or how do you offer for people to like begin to get support and community for themselves if they want it?
Ask me that again.
So, like, yeah, you've got this very public profile, you get this instant feedback, and you've built up very thick skin, obviously.
Mhm.
Like, but many people may not want to do that. Like,
Right.
and so we live in this online culture where I
Yeah.
don't think there's any way to stop it. Like, if you're going to
Yeah.
put something online, people are going to come at you
Yeah.
and be like, I don't like peaches, like you're wrong to think they're delicious. It doesn't even matter. But so then for people who are listening to this, because this are listening to this and watching it, and they're thinking, no, I do want to talk to people about like diet culture. I do want to talk to people about, living my best life in my midlife. What are some of the other ways people can find community in this very online time,
Yeah.
2026, do you think?
Well, so the first thing I would say is I want to encourage people to have connection offline. So I think it's with the loneliness epidemic the way that it is and people feeling disconnected. I want to encourage people to go old school a little bit and find in-person community where you can talk to people about things. Now, if you want to be online, and it's not that I think your question is rooted in that, people who
Yeah.
want to use their platforms to talk about it, I would say the more you express what you actually think and tell the truth sooner, the faster you will attract people who are like-minded that you can be in community with. So, right, I get all kinds of pushback, but the overwhelming response I get from people, for every bro that wants to tell me my form is bad or I should be lifting more or whatever, there are 9 women saying like this was inspiring to me, thank you
Okay.
for posting these things. So
Yeah, so because I think it's two sides to the coin. I've interviewed several people who, in the last several years, they've done like sort of TikTok diagnoses, like they find, like especially like adult ADHD, like that kind of thing, and without exception, they share. They're like, people tell us not to do this. They're like, don't get your diagnosis on TikTok, and then at the same time, they were like, yeah, but that is how I actually discovered
uh,
this, and so then I feel this sort of like duality that's like people feel like they almost need to create a platform sometimes online, but then I watch it play out kind of in real time where it's like they're surprised when people come out of the woodwork and they're like, we don't agree.
yeah. Well, I know it's so funny. It's just like my husband, for example, is constantly posting political stuff. And I am very politically,
I do
I
know.
talk about politics all the time. And the difference in our feedback on that is hilarious because he's a white 61-year-old man in Evansville, Indiana, and most of his audience are car guys and real estate guys who want none of it, right? They just want
Right.
to argue. And so, and he keeps showing up and saying what he actually thinks, but I find it wild to watch it happen to other people that I love. And so I just think, if you feel inspired to share your story online, you must stay connected to why you're doing it and just understand that keyboard warriors are gonna have something to say, and that's just the entry ticket to impact.
Yeah. So that series of questions is definitely inspired because there was this guest on a very high profile show, and I went to TikTok to find her to see. I was looking for the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm here for the comments. And by the time I got there, she had taken her profile down
Oh.
because it had gone. So it's not. It's a very real thing, like to be beaten up on online. It does not feel good. Does not feel good, and so sensitive to that. But you do have a high profile, and I know that you do sometimes share. Actually, people who can follow you will see that you do sometimes share some of the crazy things that people share with you. So I thought that would be a
Yeah.
fun line of of discussion. All right. So you are constantly creating fun programs. We talked about beauty culture, diet culture, meno culture, the courage to publish a book and to do it in a non-traditional way. You are constantly creating fun programs. We haven't really let you talk about what you do, but go ahead and tell people what you kind of do. And if you have any fun things that are coming out in the spring that you want to shout out, go ahead and do that.
Sure. I mean, yes, I have so many things. So I'm a life coach and an author, and I help my clients through a variety of ways. I do tons of international retreats for women. I have a membership community called Big Yes Energy that every Monday I give a pep talk. We have events quarterly. It's a great group of women who cheer each other on. So that is something that if you're listening to this and you want to plug into a community where you will be supported, I think that's a great option. If you want to lift heavy weights, if you are in perimenopause or menopause and you want to be in an anti-diet space with a life coach who's going to encourage you and challenge you, I do have a program called Own the Iron that I'm very proud of, owntheiron.com. And it's an app where you can get heavy weightlifting workouts delivered to you daily.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. That is very, very cool. All right. Susan Hyatt, are you ready to wrap this up with my rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
These are like, I just put these out there for fun. Okay, here we go. I know that you're actually a big reader of books. See, I cheated on this with you because I know more about you than I know about most of my guests. So I cheated a little bit and I know what to ask you. But you are a big reader of books. Do you want to share a book that you're reading now or you have read or listened to recently that you think that I or anybody watching or listening should read?
Yes. Oh my God. And as soon as you ask me, I am reading the best book right now. Can you hold for 5 seconds? So
You're going to go get it?
I've got to get it. I've got to get it. Hang on.
Go get it. You go get it. That's so funny. She's running up.
I knew. And now all my dogs are yelling because
they'll make an appearance.
Sprinting.
Yes.
This is called The Book Club for Troublesome Women by Marie Boswick. And I have a local book club, and this is what we're reading right now. I am obsessed with this book. Listen, book club is in 4 days, and I just started.
That happens.
I'm going to finish. That book is amazing. So I highly recommend any woman read this book. It's entertaining. It speaks to all the issues that we're talking about here right now.
So my bookshelf is full of, I have Susan's Book Bear, and I also have many books that she's assigned to me to read or recommended over the years. So I will put that into my shopping cart. Okay, next question. I know that you love to travel. I think that you've already done so many spectacular like bucket list type trips, but do you have in your own like travel checklist, do you have any other like sort of big destinations that are still on your list of things that you want to do?
I do, and I'm going this September to Greece. I have never been to Greece. I'm going to have my Mamma Mia moment.
Okay.
So Greece is up there. Japan.
Okay.
It's up there. I've not been to Japan. And one day I would love to go to Russia if it's ever cool to do so. So
that's it, right? That would be I don't even have any idea what the restrictions are right now, but I think generally speaking, I avoid going to countries that are actively engaged in military conflict. That's sort of just one of my checklists.
Correct. That's
just,
our
not without any judgment, political statement, just, doesn't make a fun vacation theme. So, all right, sticking on the travel theme, on a long flight, what do you do to keep yourself entertained? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you watching in-flight movies and TV shows? Do you read an old school book or audiobook? Do you talk to the people around you? What is it that you do on a long flight?
I listen to music, or I download movies or a show in advance to watch on the flight. So it's a tie between.
It's a tie.
Yeah.
There you go. That's it. Susan Hyatt, thank you so much for being a spectacular guest today on the show.
Thank you, Amy Stone. This was delightful. I can't wait for this to air.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Obvi again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.